Hello ladies and gentlemen, and welcome to another screencast by your Earth Science teacher, Mr. Stano. Today we're going to go on and look into the study of Earth's water, known as hydrology. If we take a look at the Earth from the northern and southern hemisphere, like we see in this diagram here, we can see that in the northern hemisphere, we have mostly land. Or definitely a lot more land than we see in the southern hemisphere. In the southern hemisphere, look, we see it's mostly water. So there's definitely an uneven distribution of land, or the continents, over the course of the globe. What this does is it allows, remember, water has a high specific heat, so there's definitely in the southern hemisphere more of a moderation of the climate there because there's more water. Whereas in the northern hemisphere, what we see is that the temperatures are going to fluctuate a little bit more, especially over the land or the continental masses. We noted that the Earth is covered about 75% water in total. Almost all of that water that we see on the surface is going to be salt water. We only have about 3% fresh water. Of that, only 1% is available to us for basically drinking water or whatever else we need fresh water for. The movement of water from the atmosphere, hydrosphere, and lithosphere is known as our water cycle. The water cycle is basically how we can recycle that 3% of fresh water that is available on Earth. Now remember, only 1% is actually available to us, and it's a little bit less than that. Here's a nice little diagram of our water cycle. And we can see here how the water moves throughout. So we have evaporation and transpiration. Take water and move it up into our atmosphere. Once it's there, remember that rising air cools, expands, and eventually condenses to form clouds. Where it comes down is precipitation. That precipitation, the water is going to hit the land surfaces, where some of it may infiltrate and percolate into groundwater supplies, and some of it actually may run off. This is our very basic water cycle. So we have runoff, where it flows over top, infiltration and percolation, where it goes into groundwater sources. And then we have groundwater movement that takes it across into our surface water. It's our very basic water cycle. We're going to go over more of this in class, but just so you can get it, I would definitely get this diagram down to get the major components of it. So like we said before, we want to know how this water circulates through the different spheres on Earth, and one of those is how we basically get it into the atmosphere. Evapotranspiration is the combined process between evaporation and transpiration. Evaporation, water just leaving the surface, or water vapor leaving the surface of any lakes, streams, puddles, wherever the case may be, pools. And transpiration is that movement of water out of plants. Water evaporates the fastest when we have warm temperatures, fast winds, a wide surface area, and dry air. The wide surface area, so if we have two containers, one like this with equal volumes, or maybe one like this, this will have an increased evaporation. This one right here may only have that much, or a lower evaporation. So the bigger the surface area, like we see here, the more evaporation. Like I said, also dry air or low humidity. If the air is unsaturated, it makes it easier for water vapor or water molecules to make it into the air. Once we're up in the atmosphere, the water will condense into clouds, and then we have precipitation. We'll bring that water back down into our lithosphere. So precipitation, like we studied in meteorology, is basically any form of water that's going to fall from the sky. Long Island, we receive about 44 inches of precipitation a year. Just a little fact for you to know. Once that precipitation hits the Earth, a number of things can happen. It could run off, it can infiltrate, evaporate back into the air, or be stored in glaciers. So runoff is just merely, like it sounds, it's just water running off or flowing over the surface. Infiltration is where water goes into the ground or sinks into the ground, permeates into the ground. Evaporation changes back into a gas. Storage, like I said, can be stored like we see here in like glaciers or snow. I'll leave you with this question. We're going to stop here for today before we go on to the next screencast. Hope you enjoyed it. Take care.